Human. There are several countries that faced an economic crisis like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Sri Lanka. Can you please summarize the scenario of these countries' economic crises so that a 10-year-old kid can understand? Sure. These countries have faced an economic crisis due to a number of reasons, ranging from mismanagement of resources to having too much debt. In Zimbabwe, for example, hyperinflation led to the country's currency becoming nearly worthless and high unemployment rates. In Venezuela, a drop in the price of oil, mismanagement of public funds, and growing inflation led to an economic collapse. Lastly, in Sri Lanka, a severe debt crisis has put a strain on the country's economy and caused a massive devaluation of its currency. Human, can you please explain hyperinflation in simple terms with examples? Hyperinflation is when the price of goods and services increases very quickly, and the value of their currency decreases. This means that it takes more money and more time to buy things. An example of hyperinflation is what happened in Zimbabwe in 2008. Prices were doubling every 24 hours and people had to carry around bags of cash just to buy a few items. Human, was there any way to prevent these events? Can you please provide suggestions for each country? In Zimbabwe, the government could have implemented fiscal responsibility policies such as limiting government spending and managing the country's debt burden. Venezuela could have focused on diversifying its economy away from oil-based exports and strengthening the banking system. Finally, for Sri Lanka, the government could have worked to reduce its foreign debt burden sooner, implemented better economic policies, and increased foreign investment. Human, what is your suggestion to limit the country's debt burden? One of the best ways to limit a country's debt burden is to ensure fiscal responsibility by limiting government spending, increasing taxes, and maintaining a balanced budget. Government should also explore other sources of financing such as issuing bonds and tapping into international capital markets. In addition, countries should pursue economic reforms that encourage economic growth and strengthen their banking systems. Human, decreasing government spending will reduce jobs? Isn't it? Yes, decreasing government spending can reduce jobs, as it can lead to cuts in public services and layoffs in the public sector. However, there are measures that can be taken to mitigate this, such as providing job training and education to those affected by the cuts, as well as encouraging private sector investment to create new jobs. Human, encouraging private sector investment might lead to exploitation. How will that be managed? To prevent exploitation of the private sector, governments should implement regulations and policies that ensure the fair treatment of workers, as well as enforce laws that protect the environment from polluting activities. Government should also provide incentives to businesses that exercise ethical practices and promote corporate responsibility. Additionally, civil society should also be included in decision-making processes in order to ensure that appropriate events are taken. Human, what do you mean by civil society? Civil society refers to a range of organizations, such as charities, non-governmental organizations, and faith-based groups. These groups are independent of the government but which aim to bring about social change. They engage in advocacy, educational activities, and research on issues that affect their members, such as poverty, inequality, health, and education. Human, Why would the private sector let civil society intervene as civil society is not investing anything? The private sector will often welcome civil society input because their members may have insights, experiences, and perspectives that can help inform investment decisions. Additionally, engaging with civil society can help to create an environment of trust and transparency, which fosters good relationships between businesses and the public. This can lead to better decision-making and more sustainable business practices. Human, but increasing taxes will burden the middle-class families of the society. Isn't it? Yes, increasing taxes can be a burden on middle-class families, especially if taxes are not adjusted for the income levels of these households. To address this, governments can implement progressive taxation systems that take into account the financial resources of different households. For example, they can lower taxes for people with lower incomes and increase them for those with higher incomes. This helps to ensure that everyone pays their fair share of taxes, while also protecting those households with lower incomes from being further burdened. Human, how can the progressive tax be implemented to satisfy middle-class families who struggle hard to maintain their livelihood? Can you describe it in simple examples? Progressive taxation systems can be implemented by setting different tax rates for different income levels. For example, households with a lower income could be taxed at a lower rate than households with a higher income. In this way, those who earn more pay more, while those who earn less are not burdened with a heavy tax burden. This can help to ensure that households with lower incomes are better able to maintain and sustain their livelihoods. Human, citizens are charged both direct and indirect taxes. What is a direct tax and what is an indirect tax? A direct tax is a tax that is paid directly by an individual or a business, and it is usually based on the income and assets of the individual or business. This includes taxes such as income tax, property tax, and inheritance tax. An indirect tax is a tax that is paid by consumers when they purchase goods and services, and it is usually included in the price of the product or service. Examples of indirect taxes are sales tax, value-added tax, VAT, GST, and customs duty. Human, if we remove the direct tax and only have indirect tax, what would be the impact on the fiscal policy of the government? Removing direct taxes and relying solely on indirect taxes would have a significant impact on the fiscal policy of the government. This would mean that the government would collect less money in taxes, which could lead to a decrease in public services or even a budget deficit. Additionally, it also means that wealthier people, who generally pay more in direct taxes than indirect taxes, would be paying less overall. Thanks Chat GPT and Steve. Disclaimer: this is a fun exercise done to inquire about OpenAI Chat GPT about a social issue and its thought on this.